There are chapters down in the description box below in case you were to find other certain topics to be more interesting to you. And if you're new here, please do me a favor and subscribe in case you want to see more videos like this in the near future, because it really does help me out a lot. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get started talking about some unpopular opinions on action movies. The way this video is going to work is that at the beginning, I'm going to tell you guys my unpopular opinions first, and then I would head over to my Instagram account where I did 2 different posts asking people what are their unpopular opinions on action movies in general, and what kind of action movies they would see to be overrated. I received a total of 5 comments of people who told me what their unpopular opinions were, and so I'm going to give you guys 5 unpopular opinions that I have on action movies. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started talking about my unpopular opinions. And my first unpopular opinion that I would like to talk about is a recent movie that did come out this year. It's a movie that was released on Amazon Prime, and a lot of critics seem to hate this movie, but I personally found some enjoyment to it. I think that The Tomorrow War is a thoroughly enjoyable action film to watch when you have nothing else to do at home. Some of the criticisms that the critics had with it is that they thought the CGI was pretty bad, it was bland, some of the plot summary is pretty much generic compared to some of the other action films that we have seen. But while some people were trying to look for a grand epic action film, I saw a simple, understanding, and surprisingly heartfelt type of action film that was very nice to watch. It's true that an argument can be said that the plot in here is definitely similar to other famous action films that we've already seen before, or niche type of action films that have already been done before as well. But the way that I see it, I see that these are traditional things that usually would happen in an action film that can be able to captivate the audiences. And what this movie is trying to do in order to captivate us is to have very likable characters that would feel relatable in the situation and somewhat subvert expectations where you think the plot is going to go in one type of direction, but actually it's going in another different type of direction, and it makes it more interesting. I found the movie to be neat to watch. It's not one of the greatest action films ever made, but it's not as bad as some people have made it out to be. Second unpopular opinion is kind of like 2 in 1. I'm not a huge fan of the Jason Bourne movies, but if I do have to pick which Jason Bourne movie I would say is my favorite, it would have to be the Bourne Supremacy. I like the ambition and the type of idea that the first Jason Bourne movie was going towards, but it doesn't really have that rewatchability factor towards it. The Bourne Ultimatum, while it's not a bad movie and it has some intrigue, at least when it comes towards the last act of the film, I wasn't that interested the way that the action scenes were handled, and there really wasn't anything that impacted me in order for me to say, yeah, that was definitely worth a watch and I really want to see it again. When I watched the Bourne Supremacy, it transforms the character into something more deeper. I understood more of his backstory, where it came from. I felt like I was really sticking with this character all the way throughout the entire movie. The situations that Jason Bourne was in brought in a lot of conflict, and there was a lot of great intense moments where I felt like the action was at its best. People might say that I'm crazy on this one, but this is personally how I do feel about the Jason Bourne movies. Although, I haven't necessarily seen the Jason Bourne movie, and I'm kind of glad I didn't. Next unpopular opinion on my list is more of a guilty pleasure, but I really like watching Batman Forever, and it mostly has to do with Tommy Lee Jones as Harvey Dent and Jim Carrey as the Riddler. Now, there are other things in the film that I would say are not made to be unintentionally bad in a funny way. I think that there are some other things that are legitimately good. I like the way Val Kilmer was playing as Bruce Wayne. I also like the actor that played Robin. And also, Joel Schumacher did a really good job on directing how the production design looks in Gotham City. He brought in a lot of underrated colors that were used within Batman lore, like some of the neon red and blue. Integrates a lot of the classic grimness that I usually remember from Batman the Animated Series, and I like that this movie took that approach that any other movie hadn't done yet. But the things that definitely made it really fun for me to watch is Jim Carrey acting like his full potential self as the Riddler. I am such a huge fan of Jim Carrey whenever he's doing his over-the-top comedic shtick, and this is definitely one of those movies where he does that to a 10th degree. And Tommy Lee Jones as Harvey Dent, even though he has really bad relationships with Jim Carrey on the set, also adds into that flavor of insane silliness as well. Not only is the costume design just absolutely ridiculous to look at, but his performance is just as crazy as Jim Carrey, which just makes the film all the more enjoyable to watch because these two kill it with this film. Up next is probably a big one. I think the Mad Max movies are overrated. And it's not to say that these are bad movies. I don't think that overrated should always be implied as like this is a bad movie. I just don't think that these movies are as amazing as some people would say that they are. The journey with Mel Gibson's character is understanding, and I guess it makes sense when you look at him through a post-apocalyptic adventure. But personally, I think that all three of these movies are just kinda outdated. You can go back and look at these movies and have an appreciation for them because these movies are technically the first ones to do a story like this. I give this movie full appreciation for it, but there are other movies that have tackled that type of plot that I find to be more intriguing than the Mad Max movies. Even in Fury Road, I would probably say that that movie is the best one out of any of the other ones, but even in that one, I don't find it to be that awesome to watch. And the last thing that I'm going to say is that Six Underground, Michael Bay's Netflix movie, is a very insane film that is filled with enjoyable thrills. Is it a good movie? No. But I think Michael Bay is aware of what he's doing in this film and goes all out crazy in this movie, which makes it even more enjoyable in my opinion. There isn't really much to say about it. It's just that if you're not a fan of Michael Bay's cliche stuff, you're not going to like this film. But if you do like some of the stuff and you want to see him being aware of how stupid he is and fully embrace that stupidity, then you're going to have a lot of fun watching this movie. The only difference that does make me enjoy this film compared to other Michael Bay movies is that movies like the new Transformers film would tend to be very boring because they do the exact same thing over and over again. Six Underground, it's kind of unique in its own special way that it doesn't feel boring. I found myself being thoroughly entertained. But that's the only other type of criticism that I can give towards Six Underground. Other than that, I don't know what to tell you. I just think it's a fun movie. Okay, so now here's the part where I'm gonna go ahead and go onto Instagram, where I talk about some of my followers' unpopular opinions on action movies. If you have an unpopular opinion on anything or a hot take on anything, follow me on my Instagram account, and we can have a decent conversation there. Now, what this person said is mindless action is really fun. You don't need a good story to be entertaining. And to be honest, I agree with that. I think that you can be mindless and still have yourself an entertaining movie. I don't know if this would count as, say, a good movie. I think that it would be good at doing its job, but to say, like, in general, as a film, is it good? It can be debatable, but I think the evolution of what we're going through with new action movies now, where we need a good story in order for people to actually like it, we don't always need to go towards that route. We can have just as little much of a story in a film and still be as entertaining as we possibly can with it. Because the purpose of an action film is to be thoroughly entertained with action and have fun with the character that is present on screen. The Bond films never really did it for me, just not as interesting to me as other action films, and I get what he's talking about. I like the James Bond movies. I mean, I don't think that they're like grand masterpieces, but I do really like what they bring to the table for action movies. The James Bond franchise is one of those franchises that has a stereotype within the film that does appease towards a certain type of audience member. The way that we use action movies now and then, we do different types of character development, intrigues, and storytelling. The way we create supervillains, choreography, we've been advancing this type of genre throughout years and years of filmmaking that when you look at all of the old James Bond movies, they don't necessarily hold up that much to other people, which is probably why some people would prefer the James Bond reboot movies over the old ones, even though some people would probably say that the reboot films are not that interesting to them either way. But the reason why I say it doesn't bother me is because it does some of the certain things that would make me enjoy a James Bond movie. He's a cool character. He does some of the things that nobody else is daring to do. There is some other stereotypes like him always ending up with a woman, even though it's a different lady in every single film that he's in. But I think it's the fact that he gets very cocky, and he's so cocky that you really enjoy his presence on screen, and when you see him go up against an obvious super bad guy, you definitely want to see that super bad guy get taken down. And it makes the movies all the more enjoyable to watch. This person is not necessarily a fan of the John Wick movies. The "you killed my dog, now I have to kill everyone" motivation aside, from which it's just a standard one-man action campaign. Artie did it better, and he's probably saying Arnold Schwarzenegger. The super pro assassin who managed to successfully leave the industry behind him gets back into some deep because someone killed their dog. I understand the dog was important to him, but still, for me, it was not a proportionate reaction, so everything that followed just didn't have any impact and undermined everything that came after. But that's just my take. Guess I know what this person is talking about, but I think in order to understand the movie, it depends on how much you're willing to put in your disbelief in order to actually enjoy the movie. If one guy is going to go ahead and face up against an arsenal group of people that have just as many weapons, if not more weapons, than one guy can actually carry on his own weight, and sure, unrealistically, it doesn't necessarily make that much sense. Or maybe this person does know this is the intention that the movie was going for, and the fact that the dog was killed off, it doesn't necessarily make that much of an impact in order for this movie to be held up a lot more stronger. But I don't know, I didn't take this movie that seriously, and when it did come towards the dog being killed off, I did feel like that this was an understanding and relatable thing, because if a dog were to be killed off, I would be upset too, and I would have had this fake imaginary thing in my mind where I'm like, oh, you're all freaking dead! But yeah, I just disagree with what this guy said. I personally enjoy the John Wick movies. This person has a thing to say about action movies in general. Some of it can actually become boring and repetitive. The reason why action movies like the Mission Impossible movies is that the action is continuous, but it isn't repetitive. You have car chase scenes, shootouts, and among other stuff. However, action movies today aren't changing anything. They are using the same old action that's been used for years, and most action movies are boring and repetitive because of that. So I think I get what this person is talking about, where a movie or a franchise would use certain types of action scenes, but they would need to change up certain locations, the type of materials that they used for the choreographies, or the type of materials that each person would use when going in a fight scene, different motivations or ambitions. There are movies that would have to change up the type of style that they're used to doing in order to keep the audiences engaged and interested in their movies. And I don't think that action movies now and then are doing the exact same thing over and over. I think that they are still doing new and different stuff in order to keep the audiences engaged, and if they are doing that, maybe it's just a certain type of appeal that appeases people because action scenes like that are just that fun to watch. And even if they were to do the exact same type of style that other action films have already done before, you can still find ways to make people enjoy it by depending on how much you do enjoy the character, how much you enjoy that kind of motivation even though it has been done before, how much it does appease towards certain audience members, and how it can appease to them depending on the type of actor that they have, and also the cinematography, the kind of camera compositions and tracking shots, panning shots. All of that does matter according to how the film is being made and how much it can create a thrill inside of that target audience member. So I get what this person is talking about, but I don't think that action movies now and then are getting boring. I think they're kind of improving somewhat. They may not be like exponentially growing, but they're still at this safe medium where I'm not necessarily having a problem with what they're doing. I love the first Jurassic Park, but not high on any of the sequels. Not a fan of Man of Steel, which some put on a high pedestal. And why she said the word Jurassic Park is because on my Instagram account, I posted Jurassic Park on the what's a movie that a lot of people really like, but you don't necessarily care for, and let's just leave it at that. Now, as for the comment she said about Man of Steel, if any of you guys have known me on my YouTube channel, you would know that I also don't like Man of Steel. So yeah, I agree with Rachel. I'm gonna keep this short because I've already talked enough about how much I don't like the movie. I respect it for what it's doing. I get what it's trying to do. I just don't like the execution. I don't like the directing. I don't like the writing. I don't like the way that they handle the characters in the movie. I just think that there was a better way that you could have created this Superman movie. I mean, I'm glad that it's getting some love, but in order for me to really like it, it needed to change some things up here and there in order for me to really like it. If you want to see more on my thoughts on why I don't really care about Man of Steel, click on that little icon up there. It will show you a video of me defending why I think that Man of Steel is kind of a bad movie, and also a friend of mine, Durbin, who defends this movie as being good. But anyways, guys, that is all of the unpopular opinions that we have throughout this entire video. What are your unpopular opinions on some action movies? What are some of your hot takes on action movies in general? Put your thoughts down in the comment section below and let's have a conversation about it. And like this video if you agree with what I say, or dislike this video if you disagree with what I say. I don't mind the dislikes. So that is it I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be sure to see you in the next video.